Welcome to Real Power Dynamics. I am KME. I am hosting this episode on a rare Wednesday because tomorrow, Thursday, when I usually post these episodes, I have to go to the neurologist office. So it'd be easier for me to post this today. It's Wednesday, August 12th. The day after a very historic day in our history. More on that in a minute. My guest for today is Marcus Vanderberg of Yahoo Sports. I spoke to him earlier today. Very, very good conversation. Look forward to that. You guys are going to enjoy it. Please stick around. But before we get into the interview, I wanted to give a few of my musings on Joe Biden's VP pick, which makes this a very historic week. He chose Kamala Harris. A lot of people love this pick. There are some who do not like this pick. I personally love the pick. Honestly, I wouldn't have been pissed at any of the people I saw on Joe Biden's short list for VP. Maybe Klobuchar, I wasn't too interested in her, but Elizabeth Warren, Keisha Lance Bottom, Stacey Abrams, any of those women would have been a great pick. So some people say he took the punk's way out by picking Kamala Harris. She's the establishment choice and blah, blah, blah. Then some people think it was a bold choice because Kamala Harris probably gave him the toughest debates. She was the biggest point of contention on the debate stage for him in 2020. So that's why some people think it was a bold pick. I respect the pick, regardless of how you feel about it. Even regardless of how you might feel about Kamala Harris and her history as a prosecutor, at the very least, you have to appreciate the moment in history. I mean, just think about this. We went from slavery in the 1600s. We went from slavery to slaves being free in 1865, completely free in 1867, but then we went to Plessy versus Ferguson, where segregation was the rule of law. Went to Brown v. Board in 1954, where segregation was deemed unconstitutional. We have gone from the Voting Rights Act of 1920 that gives women the right to vote, because not all citizens were allowed to vote up until 1920. Some of you guys might have great-grandparents who were alive in 1920 during this time period, right? So we've gone from all of that. We've gone from 4 little girls to little girls and boys having to be escorted to school by National Guards members, to a black and South Asian woman running for president of these United States. If you don't think that's a big deal, then there's something wrong with you. But to go over to the points about Kamala Harris, is Kamala Harris perfect? I wouldn't say she is. I don't think anybody who's worked in politics for 3 decades, which Kamala Harris has, is going to have a perfect record. The minute you get in Washington, because I've spent enough times on in the political scene. I teach political science for a living. I interned at the courts. I've worked on political campaigns. You're always gonna have dirty hands in some way, shape, or form. Even if you're not trying to get your hands dirty, dirt will still find its way to your hands. So we have to understand that. The Biden campaign is going to have to prepare themselves for a lot of sexism and racism that they're going to receive on the campaign trail. And they're going to receive a ton of it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. So what we as people who fancy ourselves as intellectuals, or even if you just fancy yourself as somebody that reads the newspaper, or somebody that just pays attention to what's going on in the world, we cannot allow false narratives of Kamala Harris to spread like wildfire on the internet, which they already have, but we've got to put a stop to this fuckery, because it doesn't make any goddamn sense. So, like, I've been seeing, like, there's been this meme going around on the internet. I'm not even going to repost it or dignify it with any more comments than I'm doing right here on Real Power Dynamics. But it's a picture of Kamala Harris with her white husband. And then the meme goes something along the lines of, Kamala Harris has arrested more innocent black men than any attorney general in California history, or some nonsense that's just not true. And it's a talking point that I saw for the first time in 2019 when she announced she was running for president. Then it died down, but then it picked up steam again yesterday, August the 11th, when it was announced that she would be the vice president pick. This is problematic because Kamala Harris, again, she is not perfect. And what I don't like about this stupid narrative is that there are plenty of things on Kamala Harris's record that we can actually debate and get to a point of having her confront these issues and asking her how she's going to make sure certain things do not happen again. One of the things that she that happened during her her time as AG was a curfew law and a truancy law. And those were problematic for different reasons. I don't think it led to mass incarcerations or anything, but it could at least be debated. If you want to talk about, I think the guy's name is Devin Cooper. I can't think of his name. This is a guy who I have a case study on in my class, and it's, some people believe he committed multiple murders. Some people believe he didn't. There was a block on DNA evidence, and it's a controversial case, and Kamala Harris may or may not have been on the right side of history with that. But again, it's a real talking point that we can all debate. What's not a real talking point is Kamala Harris. Sorry, sister, if I'm not pronouncing your name right. Is responsible for the mass incarceration of multiple black men, and posting a picture with her and her white husband doing that is just absolutely fucking classless, man. It's stupid. It's not true. And what makes it not true is the people who are repeating these talking points cannot find any documentation, variables, witnesses. I'm talking about multiple witnesses that can attest to this. So when you can't verify something, it automatically makes it false, okay? Again, when you cannot verify something, it automatically makes it false. So these are the talking points we're going to have to deal with from certain members of the progressive community. I'm talking about the hardcore Bernie bros. We're going to have to deal with this stuff from right-wing Republicans who do not know where they stand on Kamala Harris. They're trying to figure it out. They don't know how to frame her as a person who's tough and responsible for the mass incarceration of black people, or if they should frame her as somebody who went easy on crime. they're trying to figure it out. They haven't really boxed her in. Yesterday, Donald Trump called her nasty or something because of the way she handled Robert Kavanaugh, or Brett Kavanaugh. Sorry, slipping our names, yo. But handled Kavanaugh in the Supreme Court hearings when he was trying to be confirmed. She got in his ass. And I got news for you, President Trump. I don't think you've seen nasty yet. If you think what she did to Kavanaugh was nasty, just wait, because you are going to hate this woman by November 3rd. You are going to despise her. And he already didn't like her last year, and he gloated like hell when she had to drop out of the presidential race early. And she told him that she would be back, and she is back. So I am loving this. That's me. I am loving this. So anyway, Kamala Harris is the VP pick. We no longer have to debate who Biden is picking as his VP, because we know. The question now is, how do we get Biden and Harris to move towards a progressive agenda that's going to help out all people in this country? And we can do that if we get on the same page as to what we expect out of this candidacy. There's no point in complaining now, because the pick has been made. What's done is done. Now it is time to move forward. So before I get into the interview with Marcus Vanderberg, I've got one of my lists that I promoted it kind of last week when I interviewed Nate Milton at the beginning of the show. But there are some narratives. Well, actually, let's scratch that for a second. One of the things that people get disappointed about when it comes to me is when they figure out I am not one of the good ones. When they figure out I'm not one of the good ones, then I am usually met with disappointment. Oh, I thought you were a better person than that, Chris. I thought you were one of the good ones. What happened to the Ely that I knew and love, and blah blah blah? Because they don't know me. They know a personality that I show them. They don't know me at my core, though. Like, I'm nice to people when I meet them. I have manners. I have friends that are hardcore MAGAs, because one of the places I grew up in is Knoxville, Tennessee. And you cannot grow up in an area like Knoxville, Tennessee, and not have friends that are MAGAs. At least not for me, because they're, I can talk shit about MAGAs as much as I want to, but at the end of the day, I've had a lot of those hardcore Republican cats that have helped me out in my life. And I'm not gonna just throw all that away because they're MAGAs, you know what I'm saying? And if you have a family member, and I do have family members that are MAGAs, and I don't hate them, because again, those are the people that loved me and looked out for me. So there's this dual consciousness that I have with certain members of the MAGA community. Now, if you are a new MAGA, you are not welcomed in my circle. I'm not making friends with any new MAGAs, but if you've been grandfathered in, like I've said several times before, then I'm not going to throw you away because of your bullshit politics. Even though I do think in about 5 to 10 years, you will feel like an idiot defending that MAGA stuff. So I'm not one of the good ones. So I have a list here, and this is how you know if you are one of the good ones. I don't call people sellouts. I don't call people Uncle Toms. I don't call people coons. That's not in my vocabulary. But I will call you one of the good ones. So, number 1. This is the list I'm going into. If you hear one of your right friends make a racist or bigoted comment and you are more concerned about making them feel comfortable after they say it, you might be one of the good ones. Okay? So, number 2. If you start off a sentence with, what Trump meant when he said go back to your country is, stop right there. You don't even need to finish the sentence. You are one of the good ones. Number 3. If you believe that black on black crime is a real thing, and that if black people just stop killing and being violent, the problems in black neighborhoods will magically go away, you might be one of the good ones. Right. So these rules apply to black people that are one of the good ones. Let me just say that before I finish. Number 4. If you think it is a compliment when a white person says to you, you speak very, very well, you're so eloquent when you talk, you might be one of the good ones. Right, that is a backhanded compliment. Number 5. If you are in a conversation about sports and someone makes a comment to you like about how selfish black quarterbacks are, you might be one of the good ones. If you're in a sports conversation, a football conversation, and someone just says some blanket racist bullshit to you like that and you accept it, yeah, you might be one of the good ones. If you think that racism will end if blacks just wore the right clothes, number 6, and talked a certain way, you might be one of the good ones. Number 7. If you get your information about black people and race relations from PragerU, not a real university, by the way, and you think that is scholarly stuff, you are one of the good ones. Okay? Number 8. If you think that police brutality is not a problem, but America is infringing on your rights by making you wear a mask, you are definitely one of the good ones. If you think the Civil War had nothing to do with slavery, you're an idiot, and you're one of the good ones. Number 10, finally, if you believe Donald Trump has done more for blacks than any other president in American history, you are a goddamn moron, and you are one of the good ones. So I say to you people, I am not one of the good ones. Again, I am not one of the good ones. I do not think like this on any level at all. I'm one of the very bad ones. So don't mistake me being nice to you and listening to your opinion and not talking to you with high levels of vitriol to mean that I am one of the good ones, because that's not something that I am. Okay. So now that that's out the way, I would like to take this time to interview my guest. My guest today, he writes for Yahoo Sports. He is a co-host of the Kings of Sports podcast with my guest from last week, Nate Milton. Very good podcast. This guy's written for the Griot. He worked at BET. He worked at AOL Black Voices. Very, very smart brother. Marcus Vanderberg. I had about an hour-long conversation with Marcus. We talked about Nick Khan joining WWE from CAA. We talked about The Rock and his ex-wife Dany Garcia purchasing the XFL, being the first black owner and the first Latina to own a sports league. So we talk about that. We talk about I'm sorry, I just blanked. Goddamn. We talked about Kamala Harris being the VP pick and what that means for America as a whole, and why we're both very, very proud of this moment in history. And again, you got to embrace this moment in history. Whether you like Kamala or not, this is a big moment for us, so we should celebrate it. And I talk about that, just that, with Marcus Vanderberg. So please enjoy this podcast. And Marcus Vanderberg. Okay, so Marcus, the first thing before we get into the crux of the interview is me and my girlfriend are planning on getting married sometime next year and looking for houses and stuff. And she works in Santa Clarita right now. And the last place she wants to live is Santa Clarita. And I was like, hey, I have a friend who works for Yahoo Sports who lives in Santa Clarita. And the house that he posted on Facebook is a very, very nice house. So can you, before we get into the crux, can you give her a hard sell on why Santa Clarita isn't a horrible place to live?
Well, I mean, it's been a bad 2020 for Santa Clarita as a city.
Right.
Did you see the incident on last Friday with the sheriffs out here?
I did. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that was down the street from the crib.
Okay.
You know, there's a city councilman who is an open racist, who he's retiring though in November, so he'll be gone soon. But you know, I personally, we enjoy our house, we enjoy our neighbors, we enjoy our neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you know, we're not ignorant to the fact that there are a lot of racist people in the city. And,
right.
You know, it could just be one of those things where it's more amplified now, or there are just racists in every city, and we just happen to hear about them more in Santa Clarita. But,
Right.
you know, I have no regrets about moving out here. I've had no issues personally when it comes to that stuff out here yet. So that part has been great. And, you know, if you are really serious about buying, like between the housing market out here and some of the interest rates you can get now, like this is a great time to buy. So,
right.
you know.
Okay. So you hear that, Patrice? It's not
a bad
all
place.
That bad. Yeah, but. And I will, if I ever, I don't think we're moving there because she's just so adamant against it. But if I ever did move there, I would definitely be in contact with the city councilman. So anyway, I want to talk a little bit about your background, like your high schools. Because I think we probably just missed each other a lot in Los Angeles, because I was born in Los Angeles. I moved when I was 13 to Knoxville, Tennessee. But the areas that I see you've frequented, I've hit those areas too. So
we're both born in '83, right?
I was born in '81.
Okay, so you're a little older. Yeah. Yeah. So my short, you know, background, I was, you know, born and raised in Inglewood, and
right.
I grew up in a place called Carlton Square, which
right.
still there, and it might get some more shine because directly across the street now is the new SoFi Stadium, where the Rams and Chargers play, and then that's on one side of the street, and then on the other side of the street is the Forum. So as a kid, you know, being a huge Lakers fan, like there is nothing cooler than knowing that you live literally down the street from the Forum. And
my aunt and uncle lived on Osage, which is right off near Prairie. And I used to frequent that way. I was born in Inglewood as well. Were you born in Sentinel Hospital?
No, I was born. There's a hospital over off Slauson, or there used to be. I'm pretty sure I was born over there, off Slauson. I forget the name of the hospital, but no, I wasn't born in Cincinnati.
Okay.
I didn't move to Carlton Square until it opened, which I think it was in 85, 86.
Oh, okay.
So, I bounced around from like Cape Town, and then we moved to an apartment in Inglewood, and then settled in Carlton Square, where I spent, until I went away from school. That's where I grew up. So,
right. Yeah.
So, Inglewood was, at the time, mostly Black. The demographics have changed since. It is more Hispanic now. But even though I grew up in Inglewood, I did not go to Inglewood schools. Inglewood Unified didn't have the best reputation when it came to education. So, I went to LAUSD schools, and this is an old trick that I think a lot of people did.
Yes, I know what you're about to say, but just say it, because I did it too. Yeah.
So the trick was you would use a fake address, and you'd use the address of a relative who lived in the area where you wanted to go to school. So, I went to Winter Hills Elementary off of Slauson and was it Fairfax, and I had a relative who lived over there in Winter Hills, and I used, their address. So that's how I would get in. And, my parents used to tell me, like, if someone asked you about your address, you gotta remember this address.
I got the same speech from my folks. It was like, okay, so I went to, when I was out here, I went to Westport Heights Elementary School in Westchester, when Westchester was still had white people in it. And it was a nice school. And then Orville Wright Junior High.
Orville Wright,
yeah. Yeah, and then Westchester High for a little bit while I was out here. Yeah, you had to, if they asked your address, you couldn't give your actual address, because I lived in South Central. I lived off of 7th Avenue in Slauson, and you had to use a relative's address or something to get into that school. And if they asked your address, you just had to be real. I had to lie to people, and that was the thing too, is like I went to school and all these, like, I don't know if they were rich white kids, but all these well-to-do white kids. I can never have sleepovers at my house because we lived in South Central.
Yeah. I mean, I don't remember ever being asked by, like, no one came up to me and was like, yo, what's your address? But, you're definitely filling out forms, or, stuff might come up. You got to be aware of it. But, to that point, like, I'm pretty sure I told my friends where I actually lived, but because, and this wasn't really a factor until I went to middle school and high school, which I went to LACES, which is short for Los Angeles Center for Urban Studies. It was a magnet school off of Fairfax in La Cienega, and I spent 7 years there. But the problem was, like, you're living in Inglewood, so no one's really trying to come kick it at your house, because you're pulling, like, LACES was pulling kids from all over LA, but not really my side of town. So like, I never had friends from high school over at my house. It's just one of those things where if I wanted to hang out with my friends, I would go to them who lived closer to the school as opposed to them coming closer to me.
Yeah,
that was the only downside.
Yeah, like I would date like neighborhood girls who had never like been to Hollywood before, or Beverly Hills. It might as well have been on the other side of the world, because you're just so in that neighborhood. And like you said, no one was like really trying to kick it at your place when back then. And it wasn't like I was even necessarily lying about where I lived, but it was just something that like I understood that at a young age that these people would not be comfortable in my neighborhood. And I just kind of left it at that. So where'd you go to college?
So I started at Cal State Northridge, and started there in 2001, and lasted technically 1 year because so when you got into CSUN, you had to take this assessment test essentially, and they're testing for English and math skills, and both English and math I did not test high enough to sort of get past like the remedial courses. Now, I will say I took this test. So we graduated on a Thursday night. We went from graduation to grad night, which was at Disneyland. Okay. So we were at Disneyland from like 10 p.m. to like 6 a.m. We come back to the high school Friday morning, and my placement test was that Friday out in Northridge. And, I was just completely at that point. I don't know why. I don't know if that was the only time slot or what, but I don't know why I selected that day of days to take it. And I did not do well on the test, and it was placed in remedial English and math my first semester at CSUN. I passed the English course. The math course I did not pass. At some point, I just became so, I think, overwhelmed and frustrated that I just stopped going. And spring semester, I had to take basically 10 credits of math. And by credits, I mean these credits weren't even going towards graduation. They were just like 10 coursework or 10 units of course load of math. And same thing. Math was never my strength. And having to take basically double math, that was just not going to happen. So at the end of the semester, like I got a letter basically saying like, you're gone from CSUN because you didn't pass this course. And meanwhile, I was active in the student paper at this point. My freshman year was 2001, so I was at school for 9/11. 9/11 happened, I think, like 2 weeks after we moved into the dorm. So that was a huge thing for me, sort of. One of those moments where you sort of remember where you were. But I got involved in student paper, especially heavy that spring semester where I became sports editor. So in order to sort of keep that going, despite not being a student, I talked to the publisher of the paper, and he was like, look, if you just, enroll in some type of course at CSUN, because they had like an adult program where you could anyone basically could enroll in class. You're a student, and then technically as a student, you could work for the paper. So that next year I enrolled at Santa Monica College, which is a junior college. And I would take my courses at SMC in the morning, and then I would drive from Santa Monica to Northridge in the afternoon. And I would work at the student paper out there until the evening time. And I think the first semester I'd actually went through the whole proper process of like enrolling in a course, and then I never went to the course. By the second semester, I was just like, whatever. Like you don't have to verify me in order to really get me out of the spot. So, junior college was what it was. I mean, SMC, if you had to go to a junior college, like SMC was the one you wanted to go to. That was the big one. And the most, like the transfer rate's really good out of that school.
Yeah. Pasadena would be like kind of
PCC,
that's where I went for a little while and taught there. When I decided to give college another try, I went to PCC, and it was it's definitely Santa Monica College. I don't think people that don't live in Los Angeles understand that school could easily be a regular like university college. It's definitely got so many resources, so many good instructors there. So so that's kind of where you developed your love for journalism, right?
Yeah, it was at the student paper at Northridge.
Right. Okay. Cool. So yeah, I went to USC Annenberg, but that wasn't until after I finished my undergraduate degree. They say it's the best journal. I never finished. I'm still like a credit or two short because it seemed kind of redundant. But yeah, that's a cool story. Did you stop at your bachelor's degree, or did you go further?
Yeah, so after I had my credits to transfer out of SMC, I ended up going to Hofstra University
In New
on
York?
Long Island. Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. Wow, man. So how long were you
Yeah.
there for?
I was in New York for 5 years total. And I got to Hofstra in the fall of '04 and was diagnosed with Crohn's disease that
Oh, okay.
October of 2004. And that spring semester, I was back in LA, and I did one
Okay.
semester at Hofstra, and I had to come home because I was just too sick. And at that point, it's just like it was already a struggle to get to this point in terms of you know transferring. I was going to school and then working 30 miles away, and I did all this
Hmm.
work, and it was a little defeating. But luckily, in the fall of '05, I went back to Hofstra and continued with my education. And I definitely thought about quitting at certain points. I had even started interviewing for different jobs because I had the work experience at that point to do
Right.
something full time. But I decided to stick with it. I did eventually graduate in 2008. It took me 7 years in terms of when I finished high school, but really school wise, I had some breaks in there. But
Hmm.
I definitely don't regret finishing school and getting my BA. I probably do regret going to a private school and getting all these loans when the
Right.
education and I think a lot of us were sold this myth of like it matters where you go to school and
Hmm.
employers might look down on you if you don't go to a certain school, but that's just not the case. Like it's great for your network. Like I would have a different network if I went to a Cal State or a different school, a state school, but uh,
Right.
I'm still paying hundreds of dollars a month in loans, and I will be for
Yeah. It's
for
yeah,
many
you know,
years to come, and it's nothing to show for it, really.
right. And that's kind of like my whole point about school and stuff like that. I always tell students, because I get students that want to drop out and stuff like that, which I understand completely because I dropped out of college the first time I went to college. But if you know exactly what you want to do with your education and your degree, college then starts making a lot more sense when if you find out that you do not need a degree to do
Hmm.
what you need to do, then the experience you get from college is still valuable, but you don't need a degree for it. So you kind of have to. It's one of those things where you kind of have to do your research and stuff. Um, and it sounds like you did your research because you got some good. So I want to talk about your time, because when I was doing my research on you, I saw that you wrote for the Grio,
Yeah,
which is, I think I may have submitted one or two articles to them back in the day. How was that time there?
yeah. So I worked freelance at the Grio. Uh, so after I graduated, I was working at AOL Black Voices back when Black
Hmm.
Voices was still around, and
Hmm.
ended up going over to BET, and I worked for BET
Hmm.
for 4 years between working full time and then working sort of like a freelance role. But during my
Okay.
time at BET, like I was not writing and wanted to um, at least have some type of presence or voice back in the sports space. So
Right.
someone who worked at Black Voices reached out to me from the Grio and just said, "Hey, do you want to start freelancing stuff for us?" And I did. So I was freelancing for the Grio and for the Root, and
Oh, okay.
um, the griot I was doing a lot more consistently. Funny enough, when I was at the griot, Joy Ann Reid, who's now,
Oh yeah, AM Joy.
the face of MSNBC, yeah. She was working for the griot as an editor, and I was able to do, a bunch of columns there. I got to cover the NBA finals and do stuff for the griot for them. So it was very much like, it was very hands off. Like, they would say, hey, do you want to write on X? And I would say yes. And I would spend like most of the night trying to figure out how to write it. And I would email it. And then by the time I wake up the next morning, it was published. So, but that was just like, yeah, go ahead.
Those are some great articles too that I read that you wrote for the griot.
Yeah, it was, it just gave me a chance to basically do what I wanted to be doing, which was with sports writing. But at that point, I was at BET, and I was not in a position to do sports at the moment at that time. So
right.
It was at that point strictly a check, and eventually that check ran out, and I think I stopped writing that. I stopped doing that in 2012.
Oh, okay. Were you at BET during the Stephen Hill era?
Yes.
Okay. How was he to work for? Or no comment or?
No, I didn't really. I mean, Stephen was so Stephen worked in a different office than myself, and he was more on the music side. So, I maybe interacted with Stephen a handful of times. So he's not someone I worked with on a daily basis.
So what about Joy Ann Reid? Did you interact with her a lot, or?
Yeah, Joy would sometimes edit my copy, and I never expected this from her. I never knew she, wanted to do TV, and I'm just happy to see sort of her progress from working for a quote unquote black site in the griot, which was still owned by NBC at the time, to now where she is now. I mean, she's having her in that spot in prime time, like that is a huge deal as a black woman.
Such a big deal.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm happy to see her, do such great things like that.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about another influential black woman in a second, but I do have to ask you because I forgot to. I had Nate Milton on the show last week, your co-host on Kings
I've never heard of him.
And I talked about this in the podcast, and then the podcast we were filming and we just got wrapped up in our own conversation. But I gotta ask you about a couple different sports moves. The first one I want to ask about, and then we'll probably move on from this fast, is Hollywood super agent Nick Khan working for World Wrestling Entertainment. Do you think that's a good move on his part, or do you think he'll be like everybody else who gets that position, the Barrioses of the world, the Wilsons of the world, and how do you think that's going to play out?
I mean, the way I view it, it's very low risk for Nick Khan. Like, he is getting a lot of money to take this job, and let's say if it doesn't work out, he's got his clients that I'm sure will be willing to take him back, whether he goes back to CAA or he starts his own agency. Nick represented, in the past now. He had a lot of high profile on-air TV personalities, and they've come out.
No, he's kind of in that space with WWE already, right?
He helped negotiate the TV deals when he was at CAA. So CAA was hired by WWE, right? And it came to negotiate the Fox deal and the NBC deal. So this was almost 2 years ago now.
Right.
So he already had a relationship with WWE in some sense, and I'm sure that's where Vince probably first had the idea of trying to bring this guy on board, because he was such a huge part in getting them these TV deals, which has now led to some record profits this year for them. So from that standpoint, you know, he's had a great contract. He's got stock options. He had a huge signing bonus. If he can't save the company, so be it. But, God forbid if something were to happen to Vince McMahon and he is now in a spot at the company as president, who knows what that looks like, if he
Right.
can find a way to elevate into a higher role, or even better, if he can find a way to sort of reimagine WWE TV and
Right.
try to shake up what has been, I think, for the last 20 years, a pretty stale presentation when it comes to TV. So, I think
Right.
it's for him, it's a win-win.
Yeah, I could see that point of view. I'm I do think if you swim in the WWE pool long enough, your credibility does start to wane.
Hmm.
I'm not saying that's going to happen with Nick Khan, but I'm not sure that won't happen. Because I don't like about Barrios and Wilson. Did they just pick back up where they left off when they got fired, or are they still like how's that going with them?
I
I should have
don't,
did the
yeah, I haven't seen them associated to new jobs, but that just might be because when they left, they I don't know their structure if it comes to if they're under contracts or what, but let's say they're
right.
under contracts, they were fired.
Hmm.
Legally they probably can't work until they're paid out whatever time is on their contract. So it might be a
Right.
situation where they're currently still getting paid not to work. And
Right.
considering we're in a pandemic, like I by all means take the time
Yeah.
off.
Take your time. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure both of those names will surface at some point next year.
Okay, cool. So I had to ask you about that. I gotta now we gotta move into Black excellence. I think it's Black excellence. I don't know if it's gonna amount to anything, but I gotta talk to you about Dwayne the Rock Johnson, or the Rock, the Dwayne Johnson, however you want to say it, and his purchase of the XFL, and not just him, but his ex-wife, Dany Garcia, becoming a first female owner of a sports league. The Rock becoming the first Black and Samoan, but Black. I'm emphasizing the Black part of being a co-owner of a sports league. I think this is a big deal. I know a lot of people don't, but I think this is huge. I don't know if it's going to turn into anything, but what are your opinions on this purchase?
So, the thing I appreciated the most was The Rock has done a great job of making sure that Dany was getting the spotlight and sort of like top billing
Yeah.
when it came to how this was promoted within the media.
Right.
And, considering, as you mentioned, their ex-husband and ex-wife and the divorce, that they have maintained this business relationship. And, I did not know until last week that Dany Garcia's new husband is actually The Rock's trainer. So
Right.
like
Yeah.
that whole family,
Yeah.
that whole family is they have to be tight on some levels. So
Right. Yeah.
uh,
This is a great situation. Go ahead.
yeah, I mean this is having a Latina woman who is
Hmm.
now, granted, the XFL has had its up and downs. It's struck out twice. It looks like that'll get a third shot. What that third shot looks like, I don't know yet, but it sounds like, and this came up a few days ago, that Fox is already interested in trying to salvage some type of TV deal with the
Hmm.
XFL. I think their best bet short term would be trying to do something within a bubble. in
Right.
2021, where
Mhm.
you can ensure the safety of the players. You can know that you can run this league without any interruptions because of COVID, and even better if you have a TV deal attached to it. And
Right.
I
And I
I
think
want to see what Danny and The Rock can do in terms of just better, I think, selling the league to a football audience.
right. So okay. So do you think that because I've been throwing theories out left and right about The Rock buying the XFL. Do you think that he gives Colin Kaepernick a call?
Hmm. It's a good question.
Yeah.
I think he does. I can't remember if he got a call during the XFL 2.0 and they couldn't work
Mhm.
out the money situation, but you would think if there was one person you want to attach to your, like, the biggest name out there to be attached to your league would be Colin Kaepernick at this
Okay.
point.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm not going to count any active NFL players that might be playing at the moment, but if you're just looking at who's available, who's a free agent, it would be Colin Kaepernick easily.
Right. And he didn't pay that. They didn't pay that much for the XFL, right? I mean, was it 15
15
million?
million. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
not a lot
he
for.
yeah, he could get that. I'm sure he had that laying in his couch cushions or loose change in his car, man.
And
With
it's
how
split three
much?
ways because there's another investment group and then there's Danny. So
Yeah,
it's
and
it's
they
not
equal
coming from
partners,
one
right?
pocket. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so I'm definitely looking forward to this development, and the cultural significance of a Latina woman owning a sports league along with a Black and Samoan guy owning a league is I think it's such a big deal and kind of overdue for sports. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
anyway, so this just came out yesterday, and I wanted to talk to. I was hoping it would come out last week, but I'm glad it came out today because I've got you as a guest. Um, what do you think of? Before I add my own biases and stuff to it, what do you think of Joe Biden picking Kamala Harris to be his number two, his second in command, his vice president?
On some level, he could have picked, anyone at this point.
Right.
He could have picked Alfred Tunnel, and I would have voted for Joe Biden. Like,
I love you, Alfred.
hey, Alfred.
Right.
It didn't really matter
Uh-huh.
because either you're voting for Trump or you're not.
Right.
There's not a lot of in between. But the
Yeah.
fact that he did pick a Black and Asian American woman for the job, I think is definitely historic and important.
Mm-hmm.
I am not going to listen. I think any of the candidates that were on the table, I think they all had their issues, right? They all had some
Right.
flaws about them,
Yes, exactly.
and her flaws are not anything that would be enough for me not to vote for a Biden Harris ticket. Let's put it like
Right.
that.
Yeah, I think the problem with that Kamala Harris is getting that I don't think is fair. I think the criticism she's getting that I don't think is fair rather is one. I don't know where this comes from, but I'm seeing a lot of dumbasses on social media posting Kamala Harris has incarcerated more Black men than anybody else in California. Where if you've lived in California, you know that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
And then and then the meme that they post, this meme, it's funny, but it's not funny. It's a meme of her in her white husband. And I guess the suggestion or the implication is that because she's married to this white man, she does not care about Black people. And it's usually the hoteps that I'm seeing this crap from, not even the Republicans yet, because I know their criticisms are going to come. But I don't deal that well in hotepery. But what do you, like, have you seen these kind of things?
I have,
Yeah.
and it's just sad. Like, I just wish that people could stop and be happy about something for
Right.
once. Like,
Yes.
it's like they're trying to find every negative about Kamala and trying to bring her down, and it's like, why?
Yeah,
The husband thing is just like, come on, like,
this is 2020, motherfucker.
yeah.
Like, it's you know what, with the Kamala stuff. What's so disheartening about that to me is I do think there are legitimate things on her record that you can question and debate and have civil discourse about and talk about how we reconcile these things, but it loses all credibility with me when I'm starting to see stuff about, oh, she's married to a white man, or oh, she put more Black, just stuff that's not true and not verifiable and just complete and total and utter bullshit. You know what I'm saying? It's like, because I do want to move the conversation to a point where we can talk about the curfew law, talk about the truancy policy that was implemented while she was AG, and talk about that because it's something real that happened, instead of talking about just this nonsense and all this hotepery. One of my colleagues told me I shouldn't call it that, but I can't think of a better word for it. So, but yeah.
What did you make of, this came up yesterday, that Trump had donated in the past to her campaign?
I mean, I expect it. That's the thing about, and because Trump is not, he moved into the space of politics because he was upset that NBC Comcast was playing with his show on the schedule. And he had a lot of, Trump likes to be around like political elites and social elites. So, and at the time, Kamala Harris was a rising star in the Democratic Party. So him donating money to her is not a surprise to me at all, So
I'm very curious to see, and I think he had a tweet this morning that was pretty tame for him when it comes to attacking people, but I'm very curious to see how he behaves when it comes to this election, because I think he's not going to go, like he did at Hillary. I don't think, like, the Hillary stuff crossed the line.
Yeah, and the Hillary stuff too is she was just because of the Clinton brand, it's kind of a tarnished political brand, so you could kind of take advantage of that tarnishment. I thought a lot of the stuff he said about Hillary Clinton was kind of foul, but again, when you're a woman in politics, the level of vitriol you're going to get from people is just not on the same level as the level of vitriol a man is going to get. I don't care if it is a Black or it doesn't matter what the race is, because even with someone like a Barack Obama, he'd had to deal with racism on the campaign trail, and he had to deal with a lot of people trying to emasculate him and paint this broad brush of him. But at the end of the day, they respected his manhood, and they respected the fact that he was a man. And you don't get that. You definitely didn't get that with Hillary Clinton, because the stuff you saw people chanting at her, people blamed her for her husband's infidelity. They found a way to blame her for it. Like, you can't keep your house in order. How can you keep the country in order? And Kamala's not as easy to do that with, because you can say she's soft on crime, but her record as DA shows that she was tough on crimes in a lot of areas. You could say that she's tough on crime, but then the base that you're appealing to might appreciate that. You know what I'm saying? And she's got stuff on her record, but I don't think it's anything that's like,
there's no major red flags. No.
Yeah, I don't see any major red flags. I mean, there's like I just said, you can't work in politics. She's been working in the political sphere in California, no less. You can't have that job for 27 years and not make any mistakes. That is just unrealistic, you know? So that's that. So what do you have any predictions as to how you think 2020 is going to turn out? Or are you holding off on them? Or
no, I think Trump's not going to win.
I
don't even think he wants to win at this point. Like, going back to the point we were just talking about, considering we're less than 100 days out from the election, and if you remember back in August of 2016, going back to Hillary, the vitriol that was coming from Trump's mouth towards Clinton, like even towards Biden, like every now and then, Biden will catch a stray from Trump, but there seems to be this unwritten white male respect between the two, at least between Trump towards Biden. Like, he knows, like,
no,
there's a line there. He's not crossing.
Yeah, right.
It's been fascinating to watch.
It's because he's not going there. He's gone on record to say about Biden that I don't know what to think about it. The best that he's got for Biden is that he is a puppet for the far left.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's a winnable thing. I'm like you. I'm gonna go ahead and make officially on this podcast, I do think Trump is losing in 2020. Not just because of that's what I want to happen, but because of I look at all my favorite political forecasters like Rachel Bitecofer, Alan Lichtman. Alan Lichtman is never wrong, and he predicted Trump would lose, and I trust that prediction. I'm looking at the polling, and when you're that far outside of the margin of error, I just don't see Trump winning. I'm not saying that Biden couldn't mess things up, but even with those racial gaffes he's made over the course of not just the last year, but his whole career, he's got Kamala Harris now as his VP. So just kind of, you can't really do that much with that, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, man, so what was I gonna say? There was one more thing about that I was gonna say. Oh, this is off subject a little bit. Is Phil Mushnick still problematic?
Has he ever not been problematic? I mean, that's why he's at the post. Like, that's his role. You hear less and less about him because I feel like there are so many problematic tapes on the internet. But every now and then, about once a year, you'll see something that he wrote bubble up, and it's always like, oh, he still has a job. That's good to know. And
cool.
And that's that. So yeah.
Right. So and then you have Chrohn's disease. I did not know that. I have multiple sclerosis. So that's like when I met with you a couple of times. Well, not the first time I met you. The second time it was acting up that weekend, so I had my walking cane with me.
In Vegas, yeah.
Yeah. How do you maintain with that, man?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed in 2004, so I've had it. It'll be 16 years this fall.
Okay.
Really 17, because it took a whole year to figure out what exactly was the issue to get diagnosed.
Yeah, that's
Um,
exactly like
that's
me, man.
that was the hardest part, was just trying to figure out, you're going
Mm-hmm.
from doctor to doctor, and they're doing all these tests, and
Mm-hmm.
nothing was coming up. And then finally at school at Hofstra, one night I just went to the ER, and they did a CT scan of my intestines, and they could tell that there was inflammation in my small intestine. And they're like, yeah, this is probably Crohn's disease, but we'll have to do a colonoscopy to figure out if this is actually it. And I was finally diagnosed. And it took me, I mean, even though I was diagnosed in 2004, it really took me 10 plus years to really get to a point where I wasn't
Yeah.
in daily pain. I've been on a bunch of the medications. A lot of the medications you see now on television, I've been on, and
Yeah.
they work at first, and then eventually your body becomes immune to them, and they stop working, so they move you to another medication. And eventually, in I think it was 2016, I had surgery that ended up being, like, I think 1 foot of my small intestine that was
Right.
damaged and inflamed, and they're able to sew the small intestine back together and basically remove the part that was damaged. And since then, like, I felt back to my normal self.
Mm-hmm.
I take a medication every 90 days. It's just an injection that I do myself, and outside of that, that's pretty
Mm-hmm.
much it. So
Okay.
I
So
hate that
yeah,
it took that long to figure it out, but I'm also fortunate now that it's pretty much under control.
right. That's cool. That's cool. That's cool because that's how it was with my diagnosis. Because for the first 10, I would even go as far as to say, like, because I was diagnosed in about 04, 05 ish, and I was fine for the longest time outside of a few little minor issues here and there. And then in 2017 was when I start really getting like the balance problems and things like that. Is Crohn's, is it a nerve disease? Is it?
No, it's an autoimmune disorder.
Okay, yeah. So my
That,
disease is a nerve disease, but
like MS, there's no cure for MS, right?
yeah, there's no cure. You just kind of have to keep it at bay, and you got to
Yeah,
eat
same thing
right.
for
So
Crohn's. Yeah.
yeah. So I just make sure that I'm working out and not going ballistic with with my eating and stuff like that. And I just can't do the stuff I did when I was 25 years old anymore. So it
Hmm.
is what it is, man. But I appreciate you, Marcus, for taking the time out to sit down with me from Marcus Vanderberg from Yahoo Sports. Where can people find you at online and social?
You can find me at Marco Will, MarCoWill. That's on Twitter and Instagram.
Okay, cool.
And
So
then the King of Sport with Nate Milton. You can find us there.
okay, cool. And then if you Google hard enough, you'll find his past articles from the Grio and stuff like that. So make sure you do that. Very good reads, very good time. Love you, bro. I want to whenever the world stops ending, hopefully we can meet up in person and do lunch or dinner or something, or get together with our girlfriends or wives in your case or whatever, something, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were both looking forward to WrestleMania. Well, before that, we were looking forward to
Yeah.
Double or Nothing. But
Hmm.
the big thing was WrestleMania next
Yeah.
year in LA. But at this point,
Yeah, yeah.
I
There'll be
don't
some kind of
see
maybe going on. I don't know if it'll be a WrestleMania.
I don't see
Something.
WrestleMania happening in LA. Maybe they move it to Florida, and then we can get 2020. I'd rather have the year after, so to actually
Hmm.
enjoy it, as opposed to them doing it and it being half capacity, or people don't want to go because it's too risky. But um,
Right.
hopefully by May of next year, we'll be back in Vegas for AEW. At that
Yeah.
point, maybe the vaccine will be around long enough that people can actually take it while feeling safe, and you know life can sort
Right.
of move
Right.
on slowly.
Hopefully, man. Hopefully. So, again, he's Marco Will on Twitter. He's Marcus Vanderberg. And again, thanks for doing this with me, Marcus. And we gotta
No problem.
keep it up. And there will definitely be a part 2 to this interview sometime. So. Okay, so again, I'd like to thank Marcus Vanderberg for being my guest today on Real Power Dynamics. If you want to email the show and talk about any of the past shows, or you got any questions, I'll read your emails on air. I haven't been getting a ton of emails in the last couple of weeks, but the email address is realpowerdynamics@gmail.com. Again, the email address is realpowerdynamics@gmail.com. You can follow me on Twitter at KMEZDoesIt. That's the letter K, M, E, the letter E, Z, then the word does, and the word it. KMEZDoesIt on Twitter. All right. Thank you again, Marcus, for joining us. Have a great weekend, and I will catch you guys next Thursday with a new episode of RPD. Peace.